We welcome you to another Sunday School lesson. Sunday School is a gift from God. Israel conquered all the lands as the Lord promised. Israel is now settled and focused on build. All territories captured were apportioned to the 12 tribes. After about 25 to 30 years after Israel entered the land, Joshua is almost 110 years old. He knows his life and leadership will soon end. He gathers all the tribes of Israel to address them. He reminds them of all that the Lord has done for them and charges them to maintain a good relationship with Yahweh by keeping all that is written in the book of the law of Moses. This is the second of two such gatherings Joshua calls before he dies. Verse 1 says, Then Joshua assembled all the tribes of Israel at Shechem. He summoned the elders, leaders, judges, and officials of Israel, and they presented themselves before God. Some scholars suggest that the gathering in chapter 24 is a continuation of the gathering in chapter 23. While the location of the gathering of chapter 23 is not mentioned, Shechem is mentioned as the place for the gathering of chapter 24. Shechem is an appropriate place for this solemn gathering considering the patriarchal tradition. Shechem is an ancient city. Abraham built an altar at Shechem when he arrived in Canaan. Jacob bought a piece of ground and built an altar for the Lord here. Shechem is one of the cities consecrated as a city of refuge for anyone who mistakenly kills another. For all these reasons, Shechem is a sacred place for such an important meeting. Joshua is summoning them for an important occasion. Joshua called all the tribes of Israel with her elders, heads, judges, and officers to this sacred site. God initiated the assembly through a divine revelation to Joshua. Verse 2 says, Joshua said to all the people, This is what the Lord, the God of Israel says, Long ago your ancestors, including Terah the father of Abraham and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates River and worshipped other gods. But I took your father Abraham from the land beyond the Euphrates and led him throughout Canaan and gave him many descendants. From verse 2 to 13 is Joshua's address, which details the historical redemptive acts of God for Israel. Speaking on God's behalf, Joshua summarizes the story of Israel from the time of Abraham to the very point of their existence, including how the Lord has been with them providentially in all situations, and how he has loved and blessed them unconditionally. Verse 13 says, So I gave you a land on which you did not toil and cities you did not build, and you live in them and eat from vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant. This is the conclusion of Joshua's summary of Israel's history up to the point of the address. God has given the land to the Israelites and taken it from the people of Canaan because God promised it to Abraham. The people of Israel were provided for by the providence of God. They could not claim their success based on their own efforts. God was giving them land, cities, and resources, abundantly providing for the Israelites as they entered into the place that God had called them. In this case, because God gave the vision, God also supplied the provision for the people God had liberated from bondage. We are all indebted to the peoples who have gone before us and ultimately God who created and owns everything for anything we receive. Verse 14 says, Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. In verses 2 to 13, Joshua serves as God's prophetic spokesman. Now he begins his final personal exhortation to the children of Israel. Israel is to maintain a good and God-fearing relationship with Yahweh. First, they are to fear the Lord, to have an attitude of reverence, respect, and honor toward God. The fear of the Lord is an attitude of awe, produced by the majesty, love, and goodness of God shown to his people. Second, Israel is to serve the Lord in sincerity and in truth. To serve the Lord means to worship him. The word is elsewhere translated to work or labor. Worshipping God is not just singing praises or listening to sermons, it is doing the work of loving our neighbors and caring for them. Worshipping God sincerely and faithfully is an outgrowth of a heart that is in awe of him. It is a heart that serves him completely with no reservation. Such sincere and unreserved service of the Lord is to be exclusive and has no room for other gods. Joshua calls on them to put away these other gods, and serve only the Lord. Verse 15 says, "But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." Joshua now speaks to their conscience. After reviewing the redemptive acts of God in history and challenging them to do away with other gods to serve the only Lord, Joshua leaves room for them to make their choice. Either they choose to worship the Lord, or serve the gods of their forefathers, or the gods of the Amorites whose land they now occupy. Joshua wants them to think for themselves and make an honest and voluntary choice. He is not offering an alternative, but is seeking a confession of faith in Yahweh from them, which he gets. Without waiting for them to reply, Joshua declares his resolve to worship the Lord with his household, "But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Verse 21, "But the people said to Joshua, 'No. We will serve the Lord.'" In spite of Joshua's words in verse 20, the people reconfirm their pledge unequivocally to serve the Lord. The picture here is that of a shout in unison, "We will serve the Lord." Joshua's seeming negativity and threat of punishment for disobedience do not discourage or deter them from reaffirming their pledge to God for the second time. In his response to their reaffirmation of faith in the Lord. Verse 22 says, "Then Joshua said, 'You are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen to serve the Lord.' 'Yes, we are witnesses,' they replied. Joshua holds them accountable and responsible to their pledge. Using judicial language, Joshua calls them witnesses to their vow to serve the Lord. Again, in unison, they reply, "We are witnesses." Every covenant has to be sacred and witnessed, otherwise, there is no accountability for the parties involved. A witness gives testimony or bears evidence. Not only was Joshua a witness to their choice, but the people were witnesses for each other. By acknowledging their service to the Lord, the Israelites were reconfirming their covenant with Yahweh. By their own words, they were witnesses to the covenant should they ever decide to break it again. Although we cannot and will not do it perfectly, we must demonstrate daily our faith in the God of the covenant. Most assuredly, if we do not, our own hearts are witnesses against us, in addition to the all-knowing God. Verse 23 says, "Now then, said Joshua, throw away the foreign gods that are among you and yield your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel." The people had made a choice. They had voluntarily rejected the idol gods and promised to remain faithful to the God of their forefathers. For the Israelites, the demonstration of their faith in the God of the covenant was the single, but difficult, action of putting away their idols. By putting away all idols and having no other gods before him, we show to the Lord and to world that we belong to the Lord our God. Deep emotional attachments to, and lust for the hidden idols of our hearts will destroy our lives. Believers should ask God for his grace to be faithful and keep themselves from the idols of today's world. Verse 24 says, "And the people said to Joshua, 'We will serve the Lord our God and obey him.'" Now they have reaffirmed their choice by expressing their commitment to serve the Lord, and obey his voice. It is said that even today sheep recognize the voice of their shepherd, they will not respond to any other voice. Key verse. If serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Joshua 24:15. Joshua commands them to choose whom you will serve, not if you will serve. We will all serve someone, either the devil, intentionally or not, or the Lord. We really are not left the option of not serving anyone. Like the people of Joshua's day, we must choose whom we will serve and obey. Joshua, as a wise man, sees the situation sensibly. He makes the intelligent choice to say, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Joshua was determined on this course no matter what anyone else thought. His relationship with God was not based on any man, but on the Lord alone, and he would serve God no matter what anyone else did. Thought to remember states choose, this day applies to every day. God is not impressed at all by rash decisions that are made today only to be abandoned tomorrow. I think that is why Joshua emphasized that the people count the cost before they made the commitment to serve God. Jesus also urged his disciples to count the cost before they made the decision to follow him. Our lesson next week is entitled, Love and Worship God. Our biblical reference is Psalm 103:1, 17a, 21, 22. We are truly glad you spent time to learn this week's lesson with us. We hope you are blessed and may share these with somebody else. We wish you can join us at the Cubao Church of Christ soon. Our congregation is a place to discover faith, find new friends, grow closer relationship with Christ and serve with each other's gifts. Thank you very much, have a great week, and God bless.